Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our week 2 of Stories of Us. Yvonne, we agreed that we were gonna just let you kick it off.
Sure, yeah. So thank
So
you all
you go
so
ahead.
much for being here. We are so excited to have another group of great films to offer you, and a group of wonderful, brilliant, talented filmmakers to be in conversation with. So, just to give you all a little intro of who we are, the Newarkive. We're a multimedia archive multimedia project that's centering Newark families, stories, their beliefs, memories, and dreams. We're very focused on presenting images that are by us and of us. And we're very centered on doing work that centers community. And so, with that in mind, we developed this film series with the Newark Museum of Art, calling it The Stories of Us. And basically, we were focused on films that were made by filmmakers that were exploring the spaces and places that they call home, however many ways you can describe what home is to you. So just really quickly before we get started, if you haven't had a chance to watch the films yet, they're available until Sunday. If you are viewing on Facebook, you can sign up on Eventbrite to receive the links, and we'll post the link to the comments below. And you can join us toward the end of the month for an outdoor event that we'll share some more info about. So with that, Lauren, I will hand it over to you to kick off the conversation.
So absolutely. So we are in week 2, and the films that we're showing in week 2, we're showing Lalo's House by Kelley. We are showing The Right Choice by Tomisin Adepeju, and we are showing a film by a filmmaker who is currently overseas right now working on his first feature, I believe. And he goes by the name of Du Bois Ashung, and the name of the film is Where the Water Runs, and he is actually a Newark native. So I just want to give him a shout out, and maybe we can touch on some of that. I know some of the people on this call, most of these films from this week outside of Gramercy um, have been on the road, have been everywhere since 2018. And the film that I did not mention is because we are on standby with that film currently. And we're going to try to figure out when you all will get to see this film. And this film is by Jamal Mcginnis and Pat Heywood. And we're also joined by Shaq Bynes. Shaq Bynes, which is the star of the film Gramercy. All right. And I'm not going to say how is everyone doing because everybody's going to start talking at the same time. But I think what we can do is just go old fashioned ladies first, and let's meet Kelley. And Kelley, can you tell us about your film and your relationship to it?
Hey, I'm Kelley, and my film I worked on, it was like a 10-year journey. It's called Lalo's House, and it's based around a Haitian folklore named Fiet Lalo, which is a folklore of a woman who eats children. And I chose that name because this is inspired by true events of child trafficking that I was working in Haiti researching over the past decade. And so I finally was able to put together all of the true stories, and it came into this one film, Lalo's House, which I hope you get a chance to see.
Awesome. Now anybody can jump in now.
Well, hey guys, hello. Again, it's so nice to actually be here with you guys. I've seen all your work, and they're all absolutely wonderful. So my film is called The Right Choice. It's a short film that I directed 2017, and the film is about a couple who basically want to create their perfect baby. It's set in the near future, so about 2070, and they basically have the choice to create their baby's eyes and skin tone and ears and eyes and all these things. So it's a film that's Black Mirror-esque. It's like a dark comedy. I think it's quite hard to watch personally. I think, I think it's a film that we made to really make you think about themes that are very timely right now. it explores race in a very complex way as well. Yeah, and I hope you like it when you see it.
Hey everyone, I'm Jamal Mcginnis. I'm one of the writers and directors of the short film Gramercy. And yeah, I think Gramercy kind of blurs the line between fantasy and reality, both figuratively and objectively when you see the film. But in short, Gramercy is about a young man who travels back home to New Jersey and is both dealing with both his inner and outer lives. And it's a story in which Pat and I have written and juxtaposed against real characters, as Shaq plays the main character, and it blends both a fiction-based story with the reality of an area called Gramercy. And I can kind of let Shaq and Pat also give their spins on Gramercy, but in short, for the myriad of things it can be about, I would say that sums it up.
Yeah, I'll just quickly introduce myself as the other writer and director of Gramercy and producer. I couldn't sum it up any better than Jamil, and I'd rather hear Shaq talk about being from Jersey. So I'll toss it to him.
Hello everybody. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you for inviting me on this panel. I'll say Gramercy is a loosely based autobiographical representation of my life growing up in Piscataway, New Jersey. Gramercy, to be exact, section that I grew up in. And like Jamil said, it foreshadows the trials and tribulations of a young Black man internally with himself and externally with his friends.
Awesome. So one thing I saw in Gramercy, of course, it caught my attention because I know Shaq, and I don't know him as an actor. So you were a part of Locarno Film Festival, and I went to see films, and I saw blackface, and I said, I'm in. So I just clicked on it, you know what I mean, and I watched it, and the first face I see was his, and I'm like, man, this guy looks good on film, you know? And so as the film continues, I'm like, wait a minute, I know Stelton Pizza, I know Piscataway Board of Education. This is a Jersey film, you know? And one thing that caught my heart in particular, outside of what the film is about grief. It's a very, I want to say sullen and it's quiet film. But it was just like really beautifully done. When they go to this house party, there's like this tons of like improv happening, and then you get to the house party and you hear Jersey Club, and I'm like, these are the things that, like, you know, touch me specifically, because it's like, all right, we don't get to see, you know, let alone, you know, I'm from Newark, we don't get to see Newark a lot in films, you know what I mean, or properly represented. But you got this small town in Piscataway that's properly represented, and you're dealing with real people that live there. And I knew this because I recognized the people in the film, especially at the house party. And I just wanted to know a little bit of how that came to be, and your experience with working with talent. Shaq, did you act before? Were you?
No, this was my first ever acting experience.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that makes
on like a grand scale, because before I did Gramercy, I did a sketch with my cousin. He has a sketch comedy YouTube, and that was my first ever. But like, as on a grand scale like this, Gramercy definitely was like.
Okay. So I just wanted to, you know, I was just really interested in how that came about, and you know, it's something that feels very real, because I'm assuming that there's a lot of improv happening, and a lot of it just feels free form. And can you speak to that experience in working, and how you came to work with Shaq, and how that decision was made?
Yeah. Where to start? I mean, I guess we could probably start with kind of the backstory on, I guess, how Shaq and I met. I mean, I guess it goes back to 2014, 2015. I I guess first being exposed to Shaq was through a mutual friend of ours, Chidi Gabriel, who also plays as one of Shaq's friends in the film. We both went to school together down in Florida A&M in Tallahassee. And after graduating, I moved up to New York City. And Shaq was living in Piscataway and was actually going to be making his way to Atlanta. So we kind of always kept up mutually, just through Chidi, and, you know, kept a relationship going from there. And then one day in 2016, Chidi invited me out to come to Piscataway. It was my first time being in Jersey. It was where I saw Shaq again. I was able to meet other people in the film as well, like K-Ron, met Mook before, who was in the film as well. First time we met Wave was going to Piscataway. So it was kind of the first introduction to Central Jersey. It was kind of very similar to what you see in the film of, like, I went to a cookout or like a house party. There was moments where we just went to eat and it was very quiet. So a lot of that kind of mirrored what Pat and I began to write in the script. And it was interesting because I know one thing that Pat and I truly discussed was, how do we keep the authenticity of this area while also trying to at least tackle a much bigger issue that's, and you know, mental health, and how everyone deals with that on a very personal basis. And from the get-go, we always saw Shaq as being our lead actor for that, and we didn't see anybody else for that role. Just given Shaq's presence, his rootedness in this community, it truly turned into our script being more so of a blueprint to explore this idea of a young man coming back into an area that he has removed himself from, and then coming back to it and having to deal with both an inner and outer life. It truly became a canvas for us in which to paint on. And given the relationships that you see in the movie of, you know, them walking up to the house and them cracking jokes back and forth, a lot of that is a relationship that they have built since they were children. I mean, in elementary school and middle school, and those things weren't things that we could have fabricated in trying to make that, and by casting, let's just say, traditional actors. And that's a big part of this film here. And I think the one thing that Pat and I have really become intrigued by is the idea of, when you have a film like this, where you're using and utilizing spaces that people are using Shaq's home, his family opened up their home to us, and using for the house party, using a friend's house that, you know, her mom let us throw a party there, and everyone kind of came to this like center point to shoot this. It really opens up this question of, it blends what is fictional and what is reality. And I think that concept that Pat and I we love to talk to, or at least try to explore with one of our favorite filmmakers, Abbas Kiarostami, who kind of does this very similar thing where he goes to spaces that already exist, and within that space, what can you then examine? And we realized, with wanting to explore what it means to deal with both the inner and outer life, what does it look like on the backdrop of an area that is, excuse me, headphones always fall out. What does that look like on the backdrop of an area that someone is very much so familiar with, from when they were born all the way until they're 18 and move out the house? And that's really what we wanted to do. We really wanted to take that concept of blending what, I guess, fictionalization can be, and juxtapose that to what we consider reality, because everybody's reality is truly shaped with what's in front of them, as opposed to this idea of what we think reality happens to be. So I guess it's a long-winded way of kind of answering your question, of how did it kind of start. It started off of a mere idea of wondering, this is a very interesting area. I wonder how we can find our way into it, by discussing something a lot deeper and a lot personal that both Pat and I have also dealt with in our personal lives, as far as each person's reality to what it means to go through personal suffering, and what is that. So
Yeah, yeah, and I think so much of it too is, you know, being able to be interested in whatever you're looking at or whatever you're examining, and I think that, you know, I would hope that if we had set this same film with the kind of broad premise of exploring somebody's individual lives and the nuances of it, that you could do that anywhere in the world, right? And like do it with that much specificity and that much detail. The way to do that is you open your ears and your eyes and your mind, and you listen and you observe, and you let what you're observing dictate what you're seeing on screen, and not trying to impose something that maybe you think it should be or how you could change it. And I think, you know, so much of Jamil and I's process developing this film was relying on the people we were trusting to be in it. And I think with like Shaq and the entire Gramercy crew, so much of the improvisation that you were talking about came from us just, I think let me back up a little bit. We sort of wrote this loose script that had dialogue in it, and we kind of had a framework of scenes we knew we wanted to get to because we had a story we knew we wanted to tell. But I think what we realized is listening to, rehearsing with Shaq and Kayron and all the other guys, every single time you let go a little bit, magic happens, because you've trusted what you've noticed to be interesting. And it's like Shaq and his friends were so unbelievably inspiring and interesting to me the first time that I had met them. And being able to not overcomplicate that, you know, and to just be like, I know that this is really compelling. And that's why I think in the film, there are so many long takes, and there are so many, we didn't try to over edit it. It's like that party walk up scene. There's not a single cut in it. It's a 2.5 minute shot, because the thought of cutting away from this magic that you're watching on screen is just so crazy to me. And I think that to me was my experience making a film in Piscataway. I'd never been to Piscataway before making this film, and yet I feel like it's my home now, because I've paid such close attention to it. And you know, those locations you were talking about, like Stelton's Pizza and the education center, the school board, we actually had to pivot the day before we shot at those, because we had this big production mess that we'll see if we get into that later, but it's such a long story. But we basically had to change 3 scenes the day before we were shooting them. And Jamil and I were able, because we had spent so much time in Piscataway and because we had observed it so closely, we were like, okay, we can't shoot this scene here. We have to shoot a scene at Sultan's Pizza. We have to shoot a scene here, because you just trust what you're looking at and trust that it's interesting, and you know, not try to hold anybody's hand through anything. So yeah, that was my experience with it.
Well, my experience with it is real different, because I remember when Jamil came out to Piscataway, and Chad had told me, yeah, Jamil's popping out to Piscataway. I got work. Can you pick him up from the train station? So I was like, yeah, no problem. So I picked Jamil up from the train station in my Cutlass. And as you know, we're driving around in my Cutlass, probably listening to I had a CD player. I had 3 CDs in there. Probably was listening to either Queen Latifah or Tupac, one of those. But I'm pointing and I'm showing them. I'm showing them like, yeah, this where we used to go. This is the park we used to talk about. This is Stellan Peace. This is McDonald's. This is where I'm showing them everything and telling them stories. And I remember Jamil telling me that he moved around a lot because his family was in the Army, and he was super intrigued by all the stories that we had about, you know, growing up in the same area all our lives, and having all these movies. Basically, we had these stories, but they were more like movies, and that was something that we always told each other as a crew, like, man, we got to make a movie. So he leaves. He hits me up. I'm down in Atlanta. I moved to Atlanta at this point in time. And he's like, hey, man, you know, I'm about to do a movie. Do you want to be a lead role in it? I was like, yeah, I want to be a lead role. Like being a movie, like I get to wear ship in it. You know, that's cool. You know, that's what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking at all about like everything that goes into production. So I remember he sent me the script and everything, sent everybody the script, and we went through 3 scripts because they was just trying to, him and Pat, because actually in 2016, Pat wasn't on the board till the next year. And we talked and everything, and after like the 3rd script was the final one.
Third one that you saw, Shaq. I could tell you there were probably 30 scripts.
Oh yeah, that I saw. Yeah, that I saw. I got 3 of them. But
Oh, man.
yeah. So then Jamil put me in acting classes, and the most ironic thing about the acting classes in the final script was, in the acting classes, I endured a lot of the scripts I was practicing were emotional based. In this film, when you see it, it's emotional based, especially me and K-Ron's Oscar winning scene. It was very emotional based, so it worked out perfectly that I had been practicing for a whole month before the movie, the same thing that I'm gonna be doing in the movie, and that worked out cool, and that's kind of how everything kind of came about. And yeah, last year, June 1st, we made it happen, and now we're sitting here.
I mean, I think it's like you guys brought up so many things that I want to bring Kelley and Tomisin into it. Like just the concept of community, both in front of and behind the camera. Like for you guys in the makings of your films, you know, whatever community means to you, just how that played a role in the development of your story, even your motivation to do it. Kelley, you were mentioning how you were in Haiti doing a certain type of work, or what was can you just go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so it started off, so my background is in anthropology and film from Howard University. So I had, I had to drop that in there real quick, we feeling ourselves a little bit right now. So from that, I started, I was aware of particularly there's a thing called Restaveks in Haiti. And it didn't start off as a thing that is bad. It's when a family has to give up a child to be with another family so that they can go to school and be fed and all of that jazz. But there are people who make it bad. They target these families and they make them think that the child's going to be taken care of, and they end up going to places where they're abused, raped, whatever, boys and girls, whatever it may be, and they end up on the streets, and then that makes them more prone for child trafficking. And that's really what I was out there doing initially before the earthquake, and then the earthquake hit and I went back to help. And then that's where I caught wind of this Catholic orphanage where the nun was allegedly allowing foreign men to come in and have sex with the little girls there. So then I just started to investigate that place, and I couldn't find her ordained by anyone. According to people in the town, she was more of a mafia queen. She had paid to put hits out on people who tried to interfere with her work. She was a very dangerous person. And so I was going there by myself, sometimes with one of my associate producers who spoke more fluent Creole. And, but it was just piecemeal. It took a lot of support from people, the Haitian community here in the US, my family, and then eventually the little bit of footage that I got, I used to apply to get my master's at USC in film. So then it was while I was at SC that I was able to really build the team that I needed to be able to tell the story. And it was my, actually it started off as a documentary, and it was my doc faculty that told me that this is too dangerous. You should consider writing it as a narrative fiction, inspired by all of this stuff that you have, like all this information, and you can still be exposing a place through narrative fiction. And then what they had told me, what I had never thought of was, I said, unfortunately, sometimes with documentaries, people who come to see them tend to already agree with you. And when you're trying to get a subject matter that isn't as palatable, like people don't, when they go to watch movies, people aren't waking up on Saturday morning like, I think I feel like watching something on child trafficking today, like this, or like, nobody's the child soldiers in Uganda. Like no one's really thinking about that. What you do is you are able to use narrative fiction to Trojan horse subjects that aren't as attractive. So like you think of stuff like Blood Diamond. People go see it because of Leonardo DiCaprio. It changed the whole diamond industry. Everyone asks, are they clean diamonds? Like everyone, and so all these places had to change. Same with Beasts of No Nation, where people go see it because they want to see Idris, and they end up learning about child soldiers in Uganda. And so they taught me that, and I ended up doing that. And so the film was able to reach more places, but it took so much. This was my thesis film out of USC. And we collaborated with look how God works. There's only one film school in all of Haiti. And it happened to be in the city that I was aiming to film in. And so I had some contacts, and I was able to bring them on as a co-collaborator with USC so that I could bring a skeleton crew over. So then what we did to tell this story, because they wanted to get this story out too, is like I would bring one sound person, and then they would pair me with one of their sound people. So then they worked as a team. Same with production design. I brought one production designer, and they paired them with that. And for our camera team, they got them their second ACs and all of that jazz. So we were a family. Like we could not have done this story the way that it became without the support of the Cine Institute in Haiti, without the support of USC, without the support of the Howard community who helped donate money, without the support of Garcelle Beauvais. She came on board because she also plays the nun in the movie, and she wanted to do more than just play a character. She wanted to executive produce and make sure this went where it went. And her co-producer, Lisa L. Wilson, and then they even brought Jamie Foxx on board to make sure that we could afford to fly there. So, because I sure was trying to make California look like Haiti at one point. I was like, well, this little farm maybe under this tree if we stay real tight. But it took a family, it took a community to be able to tell the story, and thank God for that community, because I could have never been able to do this on my own. Even as filmmakers, sometimes we don't realize how much of an impact our stories can make. We're just trying to tell a story. It's just on us, and we're just moving with spirit. But I had no clue. This film went on to the U.S. Embassy, saw it in Haiti, and then they commissioned it to tour the whole country to educate parents about the dangers of these fake orphanages, because the majority of children in orphanages in Haiti aren't orphans. They have parents. It's just that the parents can't afford to feed them, and they take them to places that have names like Catholic, because Haiti's like 85-90% Catholic, and they trust people. And so it helped educate, and it helped change the law in New York. So UNICEF used the film to help lobby the assembly members to change this loophole that was in a law in New York, where they had to, and if they had someone who was trafficking children, the prosecutors had to prove that the child did not consent to sex, which makes no sense. It's like a child consenting to sex. So there were people who were getting off because of this little loophole, and they used Lalo's house and had us come out, and we spoke with UNICEF lawyers and the team and lobbied the assembly. And so now New York has tougher laws on child trafficking, but again, it took a community to even make it this far, because when I was doing it by myself, I mean, this took 10 years. I was just drudging along little by little with the help of like one or two people. And putt-putting around, but the persistence brought the family together and made it what it is now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, we'll get back to a lot of the things you mentioned. Tomisin, talk about, because I mean, you have something that is, you know, a world that's a place that's created, but still very much informed by, I'm sure it sounds like, you know, your community, your identity, and the dynamics and the challenges there. So speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, no, of course. You know, because it's set in London basically, but it's set in 2070, which for me was very interesting because I felt that, you know, it's really set now, ultimately, because I read the script sort of 2017, and you know, I saw that, okay, the themes in there were just incredibly powerful, but I knew that, you know, it felt like a very long play. It was 20 pages. Firstly, it was incredibly long, so I thought, okay, you know, this has to be very short. And it's the first film that I directed that I didn't write. At first, I was like, I'm only going to write and direct my own stuff. I don't want to direct other people's work. I just don't have the time for that, you know, because I mean, I've got all these narratives that I want to tell. I don't want to be directing this guy's work and, you know, and then trying to raise money for his film that I don't care about, you know. But then I read the script and it was just incredibly powerful, you know. And then the writer said, I actually have £10,000. I was like, oh, okay, that's a good, you know, okay, let's talk, man. Let's see what you know. So the money helped because, you know, trying to raise money for a short film is mind blowing, you know. So the 10K helped, and he was going to pay me money as a fee, and I said, bro, don't pay me anything, you know. Let us put it back into this film, because this film it's effectively, it's like a play because it's set in one space, and we have these two characters in this world where, you know, they can create their own baby, you know, and I read the script and I thought, you know, as a Black man, you know, race has played a massive part in my life, you know, because I'm actually Nigerian. I was born there and I came here when I was 12 years old. So I'm a British man who's also a Nigerian man, you know, and I've experienced racism from like Black British people who don't see me as an Englishman, you know, so not even from white people. Black people are the ones that sort of, yeah, they've made things very, very hard for me out here, you know. So I find that very fascinating, and I wanted to explore that in the film, you know, because this couple, you know, a young Black couple, they're told, okay, you know, you have these three options. You can choose your baby's sex. Do you want boy or girl? You can choose your baby's, you know, race. Do you want him to be, you know, a dark-skinned person or like a light-skinned baby? And then you can choose if you want your baby to be gay or straight. You know, all these choices, and you know, and these choices will impactfully affect their child's life. So the film asks very difficult questions, and the choices that the couple make informs a lot about what is going on now in the world, you know. And I think for me, I wanted it to be a very unpleasant experience to watch, where you're very uncomfortable. You know, we screened the film at Sundance, and I remember, you know, Sundance has a very white audience, you know, a lot of Utah people, you know, and and we screened the film, I remember, and you know, they all hated it, and I was so happy about that because they were uncomfortable, because we were asking very difficult questions. You know, my crew, we were probably the only Black crew in that room, and then at the talk afterwards, they were asking me, so why are you making this film that's aggressively racist? And, you know, you're saying that they should choose a Black baby, you know, why doesn't, because basically in the film, you know, the advisor advises them to make their baby light-skinned, because if the baby is light-skinned, there's more opportunities in life, you know, and then to make their baby straight, not gay, because if the baby's straight, it's easier for them. All these difficult choices, and you know, the audience, they went batshit crazy, and that's exactly why we made it, and it made me incredibly happy. You know, I you know, my actors were uncomfortable. I was like, no, this is, you know, film is an art form where we can explore difficult questions. We can make people think, make them feel uncomfortable. And if you make a film where they watch it and they go home and then they don't even talk about it, then it's got no impact. You know, you want a film where you go home, you're like, that's really messed up, or that's really funny, or that's quite dark. And, you know, so yeah, so for me, you know, it was worth the hassle, because even making the film itself was difficult, because we only had £10,000 and there's VFX in the film. And I don't know if you guys have worked with VFX. I know it's hell, isn't it? Really, it's like, you know, you can't make a VFX film for £10,000. That's like $7,000 or something. You know, it's not wise. So I advise against that, actually. Don't do it. Yeah, so but we made it work somehow, you know, and yeah, because, you know, it was a Black Mirror X film, so it had to be set in a future that you recognize, and ultimately you're forced to think about your own blackness, you know, and you know, as a Black British man, but also as a Nigerian man as well. So yeah.
It's amazing how that affects you all across the world. Um, and when I saw the film, I saw it in LA. And it's funny that I don't want to say I'm surprised, because, you know, that would be my fault if I say I'm surprised that, you know, the Sundance crowd didn't like the film. But I saw it in LA. I saw it in like Baldwin Hills, Crenshaw, and the crowd screamed. You know,
Yo, we loved it.
you know,
I was with you, Laurent. It
yeah,
was so good. We
Yeah.
were.
erupted. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
were speaking. You know, it just spoke to so many hearts, and I was just like, man, it's amazing. And this is one of the things I missed definitely for COVID. You know what I mean? Just seeing how like audiences really absorb film. But yeah, it's also, you know, we're dealing with films that are all across the world, and we're still seeing, you know, much injustice for Black people, which is just, you know, the same old story, but it's incredibly sad. Kelley, so you did speak about community. And I just particularly want to talk about the actors that you had in your film. Did you have to use a lot of local actors as well as a part of your film? And then you also worked with very young people about this very, very dark topic. And I was just really interested in knowing what your experience was with that.
Yeah, that was hard. That's funny because right after this, I'm speaking at a master's class on ethics at USC, talking about how to deal with films like this, where you have such young, I had a real 5-year-old that was being put in a questionable position, you know? So like, how do you protect the child actor while trying to convey something so harsh? Again, it comes back to team. It comes back to like who you choose. And that seems to be the theme with this group here. Cause I know with Pat and Jamil and Shaq, it became like a family, like a unit. And that way you can work around the problems together and make things easier. So that's what I had too. I had Jimmy Jean-Louis, who is arguably probably the most famous male Haitian actor from Haiti, next to Garcelle. He was so kind to let us use his little girls. And so he and his wife came with us to Haiti. We brought his little girls who are, I mean, they're born in America, they're Haitian American. They speak Creole to them, but they didn't really know it fully. They knew French, but they didn't know Creole, like other than to reply back in English or French. Like it just wasn't practiced all that much. But they started to practice more for the film. We had to bring a studio teacher with us to Haiti. We had to abide by all of the same rules and regulations of the laws here in the US, even though we're going international. And you know, having Garcelle there as one of our actors also helped with having little children and also with the language barrier and all of that. So what do you want me to get into? Because I could go long on this one. Do you want me to talk about dealing with the children?
You know, time flew. We don't have a bunch of time, but I definitely, you know, was interested in, you know, how do you deal with dark topics and young people?
Let's go with that.
You know, yeah.
So there's I mean, not to any like spoiler alerts. It doesn't matter, honestly. If you know this or not of the film and you haven't seen it, it's still going to be just as atrocious when you see it. But there are scenes where there is a rape happening of a young girl. And so with that was the more simple thing, because we just cast a girl who was 19, 20 to play younger, to play like she was 14. She looked really young. And then we had a specialist on set, stunt coordinator, who also dealt with any type of nudity or sexual scenes. And so they worked with them to make sure that everything that I was asking for was comfortable enough. And then we did that rape scene, which was a very hard scene to deal with emotionally. I like Garcelle and Lisa actually excused themselves from the set after a while. But that was the easier thing to deal with. The harder thing, it was our 5-year-old. Because, you know, the other one, we're dealing with an actual adult who just looked younger. But with our little girl, she was, there's a part where she's being auctioned off and she's being turned around for her body to be looked at by a man because she's being sold. And so just had to become creative in a way that I told our little, because to this day, our little one has no idea what this movie's about. Like, her big sister, they were sisters, which helped a lot too, so they can comfort each other. But her big sister, who was like 14 at the time, turning 15, she can handle the subject matter a bit better, but we still did precautions to protect her. But I told the littlest one that Garcelle was modeling her. She's modeling in this scene, but the only catch is that she doesn't like the outfit that she's in. So when Garcelle spins you around to model, you need to show me how much you don't like the outfit, how uncomfortable it is for you, and how you just don't want anyone looking at you right now. And so she's like, okay. And then there was a lot of like Creole being spoken in the scene, and the parts of English that were being spoken weren't enough for her to figure out what they were talking about. So it really worked out. So when she was being spun around, she was really ashamed of her clothes in her mind, but it reflected what we all know, what was really happening to the character. And then to protect the 15-year-old, even though she's old enough to know the subject matter, I still didn't want to expose her to that, the rape scene that she is in the movie watching. But so we shot it on different days. I spent a lot of time with my children so that I can get to know them and they can trust me, especially with the subject matter. And I talked to her and asked her what are some of the things that really get her angry, bother her, make her sad. And then as we got closer, I asked her, is it okay if I bring that up on set with you, especially on the day that we have to do the scene where you're supposed to be watching the rape? And she said, yes. So then I was on the other side of the door. So it looks as though she's watching what's going on, but really it's me on the other side of the door. She was never on set the day that we did that with the adults. And I was just talking through to her those things that upset her, made her angry, made her uncomfortable and furious, and so that we can get those reactions from her without exposing her to the true subject matter that's going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have, 3 very difficult films, represented on here. And I just want to end with saying you all did an amazing job. It feels like time really flew by, but we are closing at the moment.
We are you? Because I'm not actually, Stephen, I don't know if you're trying to message me. I don't have my phone anywhere near me, so I have no idea. Are we at a Q&A period, or can we do like 2 more?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. So we can ask right now if anybody, has Q&A, we can drop it.
Carry on a little. Okay, Stephen.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask too, like everyone here, the subjects, the topic matter is, largely a subject that is, giving voice to the voiceless, confronting oppression. I think, Tomisin, I love that story about this making the Sundance audience uncomfortable, because to me, like, that's so typical. I just think the fact that you were doing something that was centering us and how we internalize what we experience in anti-racist societies and have to navigate ourselves based on that is it's a lot of times it's the type of nuance that mainstream film is not sharing with us about our communities, and I think all of you all have stories that are very much like that. And so I'm just curious what you all I guess would say about the challenges that you've confronted, like when you're making films within a certain system that we know has not been friendly toward us and towards these types of stories. I guess, like, what are some best practices, or just some thoughts in creating it and getting the work out?
I think mine is always just, you know, I think making films you deeply care about, it lets you sort of like, you know, tackle every sort of like obstacle that you face. Because, you know, making films is an incredibly difficult thing, especially when you have no money, you know. I mean, if you had money, it helps, but it's still difficult, you know. So when you have no money, it's even extra difficult. So I think ultimately, you know, I care about every film I make. So for me, you know, I actually enjoy the challenge of it, because for me, you have to fight for what you care about. And, you know, I think every film I've made, I don't think I've had a very seamless experience. It's been difficult trying to raise money, trying to get crew together. And I always want to pay all my actors and crew. So, you know, I've used my own savings most times. You know, my parents, they think I'm crazy because I keep using my money, you know, but they don't understand it, you know. But yeah, but it's like, I care about it deeply. And I think these narratives, if we don't give a voice to them, then, you know, then they have no platform. I think Sam Ben made films in the late 1960s, and I think he said a quote that has always stayed with me. It says, if Africans don't tell their stories, Africa will disappear. And that quote has always had a profound impact on my life, because, you know, for him, as an African man, I have to tell my stories, because if I don't, the idea of Africa will be transformed by people that don't understand Africa. So for me, my narratives are not just influenced by my, you know, my British culture, because I am an Englishman, but equally my Nigerian roots is important, because I find that there are people telling my Nigerian stories that don't have an inherent understanding of the culture. So for me, my goal as an artist is to make sure that I'm doing this in a very truthful way. And that comes with a lot of costs and sacrifices, but it's part of the ride, you know, and I deeply enjoy the ride. And I'm going to keep on sort of riding as long as I can, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, I think one thing that I was really interested in, I love that this question, is just the word us, you know, and all the meanings that word has in it's so, there's so many levels to it. There's like there's the us's within each of us, you know, and there's the us of race, and there's the us of nationality, and there's the us of there's just so many meanings of that word. And, you know, for me, I think one thing that, Jamil, I know you would echo this as well, but I mean, you both expressed the other two wonderful filmmakers on this panel have also expressed how difficult it is to raise money for short films, and Jamil and I also really ran up against that. And I think a lot of it, you know, for us was the barrier of the kind of movie that we were trying to make. And I think Jamil and I were very influenced by a lot of world cinema, and world cinema in general is very different than American cinema. I think in American films, traditionally, your story is your movie, where I think in world cinema, in a lot of, you know, European tradition, and even in a lot of like African tradition, certainly in Asian tradition, it's cinema is its own language. And, you know, so the idea of what happens and why it happened and what's going to happen next, those things are less important. And it's more important to just feel and to almost be able to put two images with a sound, and you're not really sure what's happening. And but you're feeling something in your body and your chest, and it's like, wow, this is what it's like for Jamil and I was like, this is what it's like to grieve. This is what it's like to be depressed. This is what it's like to live, to be alive. And how unbelievably complicated that is, and everything that goes into that. And so, you know, for me, I think I think because we were making a film but we were committed to making a film that didn't just fit into some formula so we could get money for it either. You know, we were really committed to listening to ourselves about the way to tell this story, even if it was going to make it a lot harder to get it made. And so for me, that's one part of it. And the other part of it is us is just, you know, Shaq, I remember the moment where, you know, we were filming the final scene at the gas station and we were standing next to each other. And I had this realization where I felt like, you know, we were all sitting there telling each other stories, you know, and that you were telling my story and I was telling your story and your area's story, and Jamil and I were telling each other's story, and we were all kind of in this together. And it was such an unbelievably powerful moment to be standing there under those fluorescent lights and just feel that. And to me, that's like why you make movies, is to just listen to yourself and to listen to the people you decide to be around. You know, so yeah, that's, you know, that word "us" is so powerful in so many ways.
Most definitely.
There's a, oh, go ahead, Shaq.
No, I see it. We have a question. I was going to touch on this really quick. It says, Shaq, what is your connection to Jersey? And what aspects of the NJ culture were reflected in your film? My connection is being from New Jersey, being from Piscataway, growing up there all my life. And the aspects of NJ culture will, without being said, the party scene. And that's with the Jersey club music, the dances that we were doing. That definitely reflects New Jersey culture to the T. Not only that though, the dialect, because like what Jamil and Pat said, what Pat said earlier, how they had this loose script of what the story wanted to be. They were super duper understanding on, you know, some lines were written in what they would think we would say, but they gave us the freedom to switch it up and improv it and to speak how we wanted to speak. So the impact of NJ in the movie is with the dialogue and the party scene for real.
Cool. There was one scene in Gramercy that I wanted to, you know, we don't have much time. We have about like 2 minutes. There's one scene, and there's a scene where you're walking through a field and there's someone laying there and there's a flower growing from his mouth. Can you touch on that really quickly?
My question maybe for you would be, what did you take away from it?
You're doing that old filmmaker thing.
It's so
Questions, not
powerful.
answers.
Hey,
Questions, not answers.
hey.
It's my favorite part. I'm glad you asked that, LaRon. That's my favorite part of the film.
So
Oh,
powerful. So powerful.
I'll try to keep it short. I guess the one thing I'll probably like step around it a lot, because I think the last thing I would want to do is kind of put my imprint on what someone would take away from it themselves. Because I think a lot of what we try to do within our films is truly raise a lot of those questions, and people come up with those own justifications as opposed to us telling what an audience to think. I think what kind of Tomisin touched on before, which is, you know, I don't know if I'm necessarily an individual that's trying to push a certain ideology or thought. I might have things that I personally think of, and I want to kind of use an arena in which people can explore that themselves and come to their own justifications on things. Just because I think in a world where we are told so much of what to think as opposed to thinking for ourselves, I think the more that we can give space to doing that, I think better off we'll just be as a society, even aside from film. But I think one guiding light for that scene where Shaq is kind of trying to reconcile with both his past and his present in one given moment is the flower that's sitting in his mouth is a chrysanthemum flower, which within Eastern Asian culture represents life and death, and to kind of understand that duality in one simple object was a very interesting through line throughout our whole film, and I think it was a very true representation of kind of what Shaq was going through as he was trying to navigate himself through his reality and what was happening in his head, where he was questioning that concept of both life and death. And it kind of does bark back to that idea of Abbas being one of our favorite filmmakers. Is he has this interesting quote that touches on, we're all given this gift of life. And within this film, we kind of talk about someone going through depression and thoughts of suicide, whereas we're all given this card of life, and it's up to us to whether we deal the card of death or keep it sitting in our pocket. And to understand that you have that ability will help you live a more gracious life. So within that object of that flower, I think it represents not only just life and death, but the fact that you can take it with you or you can leave it aside. And that was a really, really powerful, I guess, point for us to have that flower within that part of the film.
You know, it was one of the first images we drummed up, actually.
Cool.
Well, we have one more question. I just wanted to add it, and I was asked, with the experience of Gramercy under your belt, is this an aha moment for you? Will you continue acting? Yes. This is something that came supernatural for me. I've grown a love for it. God willing, this opens up many more doors for me, God willing, and you know, I get to be somewhere with Michael B. Jordan or something.
But look, be careful what you say. That's all I'm saying. Be careful what you say. All right, hold that thought. I just want to thank everyone for joining us. This was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. For the people that did not get to see the films specifically, Lalo's House, The Right Choice, and Where the Water Runs are up right now until Sunday, I believe. And the link should be in the chat section, whether you're on Facebook or you're on Zoom with us. And just want to thank everyone. We are the Newarkive. If you want to follow the Newarkive, we are on Instagram and we are on Facebook, NEWARKIVE, to follow us. If you are from Newark and you have stories to tell, please share them with us. And check out our wonderful films. Please be on standby for Gramercy. We were originally scheduled sometime later in October, but we're still figuring it out. So
can I jump in really quick? We're actually, so the film's screening at the Chicago International Film Festival and the New Orleans Film Festival and the Hamptons International Film Festival coming up in the next couple of weeks. So if anyone wants to watch the film at any of those festivals, it'll be available online in America through those.
Copy that. So look forward to that, y'all. And yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys. Thank you for hosting us.
Appreciate you guys.
You guys
Thank
are
you so
wonderful.
much.
Oh,
Thank you.
wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.